Hello everyone, we have another Tekken 8 character reveal, so welcome to our Claudio primer. A newcomer to Tekken 7, Claudio is a very simple character with one of the game's smaller move lists. While his lows aren't oppressive, they're enough to boost the value on his exceptional mids and highs, and he has a unique power-up mechanic called Starburst to give him even more oomph. All things considered, he's one of, if not the strongest characters in the game relative to his complexity. So if that's your bag, he'll be a perfect fit. As with our other primers, this video should give you a good quick rundown on the character to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial for the whole game since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character specific guides. But enough of all that, let's begin. So again, Claudio's game plan is pretty simple just for the fact that his move list isn't very big. How much you can get done is going to largely boil down to how good your fundamentals are. Spacing is a big one because Claudio has some of the best whiff punishers with his hop kick, back 4-2, and the 1+2 string, among others. If you have Starburst, which we'll come back to later, you can include forward 1+2, 1+2 as well. These synergize well with his kit because he's really good in the mid-range, which again just emphasizes the spacing aspect. The hop kick in particular has some nasty setup traps. For instance, hop kick after down 3 will beat jabs. Anything that gives him that kind of spacing, so think forward 1+2 or back 1, is perfect for a hop kick setup, or any of his other whiff punishers for that matter. Otherwise, you're just going to use a simple style. Sidestep 4 will be your major low threat. It does a nice chunk of damage, is relatively safe on block, gives sizable advantage on normal hit, and knocks down on counter hit for a free follow-up. Beyond that, down back 4-3 is really good to get people ducking, or you can do some simple toe tapping with down 3, down 4, and down 2. Down 2 mostly for the threat of the second hit, down 1 for speed, and down 3 for range. But his move list is filled with really strong mids to complement these. Back 1 or something like forward 4 are both safe and will still allow you to keep up pressure on block. Back 1 is especially scary at the wall since it'll splat and has some big wall combo potential. We mentioned forward 1+2 earlier, but you can also throw in forward 4 as another safe big knockdown mid. His mid pokes are strong too, namely down forward 1, down forward 3, down forward 4, and back 3. In terms of speed and function, back 3 and down forward 4 are his replacements for the traditional down forward 1 poke, although his down forward 1 is still very good and has a second launch hit if you feel like you have a good read. It just becomes far riskier if you do that. Down forward 3 is probably the scariest though because it has 2 good string enders which you can confirm off of the down forward 3, so it greatly minimizes their risk. You also have a really strong pressure high with running 2. Otherwise, don't forget his jab, since you should utilize the single jab harass a lot, although he also has a safe high mid with 2-1. Speaking of, he can eat up impatient players with his strings because a lot of them will launch on counter hit after the first hit. This includes back 3, 2-1, 4-3, and back 4-1. So really make them pay for trying to take their turn. So the only other thing left then to mention is his stance, for lack of a better term. Basically, after landing certain moves, he gets a glowy hand called Starburst or STB. From there, certain moves gain better properties, which then uses the charge. Getting a charge is pretty simple since the list of moves is short. Most commonly, you'll get it from running 2, otherwise back 2, forward 2-2, and back 4-2, which are all good punishers, will give you the charge as well. With a charge, the most notable changes are that your forward 1+2 string becomes a safe launcher, down 1-2 and while standing 1-2 hit harder and give big advantage on block, and down 2-2 launches if they don't block the second hit. Back 4-3-2 gets better as well, but mostly as it pertains to juggles. And a final note, you can only hold 1 charge at a time, but you can keep getting it back after you use it, so there's no limit in that sense. But that's it, nothing super complicated. Chip away with the lows or harass with running 2 to try to get them to duck, then spam whichever mids you like the most. Since Claudio isn't a mix-up beast, defense will be very important. That said, his block punishing is above average, his jab string is standard, but only slightly slower are both 4-3 and forward 2-2. The latter we already mentioned can give you a charge of STB. If you need a mid, down 1+2 is roughly the same speed. After that, you have down forward 3-1 or back 2. Again, back 2 being a move that can give you a charge. Then you can start launching with hop kick. From crouch, it's very simple. While standing 4 is your generic fast option. While standing 1-2 is the next tier, or while standing 1-2 if you have a charge. Then it's either hop kick or while standing 2 for your launch after that. Hardest thing with any of these is just paying attention to whether you have starburst or whether you want to do a punish to get it. So for example, choosing between 4-3 and forward 2-2. All of these are good for whiff punishing, just also remember the moves we mentioned before. So the 1+2 string, back 4-2, which will give you starburst, and forward 1+2 if you already have starburst. Whiff punishing is definitely a strong point for Claudio, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, his crush tools are solid. Hop kick is of course a great low crush, although all of his jumping moves can be useful, and they all of course low crush. Up forward 3 is a pseudo orbital in that it only launches on counter hit, but it's still a safe chunky mid with great range. Up forward 2 doesn't launch, but it's another safe hard hitting mid that can splat. Up forward 3+4 is not safe, but it's not super risky either. It does decent damage and can also splat. Forward 3 is technically a low crush, and it is a safe counter hit launcher. Just note it's a high, so if they do a low that ducks, it'll pass right over. For high crushes, you of course have all your low pokes, but we can also mention here down back 3. It's very risky on block and reactable, so you shouldn't just be throwing it out, but it does launch on counter hit, so it can be very useful against opponents that are overusing highs. I will also mention again down 2-2 because it is a counter hit string, so if you have a charge and you think you can land a counter hit down 2, that second hit is going to be guaranteed for a juggle. You also have just basic fast counter hit launchers for interrupts with 4-3 and down forward 2. And lastly, he does have an armor move of course, but note that it's one of the weaker in the game since it's on the slower side and doesn't yield a lot of reward relative to the block risk. It's best used at the wall since there it at least gives a splat. And that's about it. So again, pretty simple game plan. Work your spacing and wait for those punish opportunities, and if they're getting too cute with the highs and lows, whip out one of your crush tools. Okay, so now some wrap-up items. First, let's talk tracking. Claudio might have the best homing move in the game with back 1. It's quick for a homing tool, it's mid, hits hard, has great range, gives a really nasty splat, and it's safe enough that you're not stuck there afterwards if they block it. All of that is why it's so good paired with sidestep 4, especially at the wall. Forward 3 and forward 3+4 deserve honorable mentions. They're both highs, but they're very safe. In fact, forward 3+4 gives advantage on block, and they give good reward. You'll also find them in other strings, which of course helps the tracking on those strings, but back 1 is still your moneymaker. Second item, note that his approach game is pretty solid. Running 2 is the go-to, and you'll often see Claudio's use that to try to get people to duck, but it's nice for just getting in. Forward 4 and forward 1+2 are there to help take advantage of duckers. Forward 1+2 is not homing, but it might as well be, and it's another move that gives a charge of STB on hit. Knowing how to approach is just a form of spacing, which is a fundamental tool you'll learn over time, but these are good tools to help you do that. As usual, we'll skip over juggles, but check out the video description below for a link to some sample combos. So the last thing to mention then is his rage drive, which is just a better version of his back 4-2. Back 4-2 is normally punishable on block, however the rage drive version gives significant advantage instead, and it also gives a full launch on normal hit, and it's the only move that he has that will give a charge of STB on block, so it's very good. This brings us to the end of the primer. I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.